So I think let us start. So a very warm welcome to all the participants and the panelists for joining this session, which is titled Climate Heroes, Women Leadership in Locally Led Climate Action. This session is being jointly hosted by Prakriti Resource Center, Climate Action Network South Asia, ICAT, and IUB Indonesia. I am Ruchi Chaudhary and I work with Climate Action Network South Asia. I come with over 20 years of experience working in development sector in the field of gender and intersectionality. I will be the moderator for the day today. And when we talk about this session, when we talk about women leadership in locally led climate action, it is important to mention that the people who are closest to the nature, the people who serve the environment and who manage natural resources most efficiently are the poor and vulnerable because they can't afford to waste. And within them, it's the women who manage the resources for the entire family. Climate change affects women disproportionately and also reinforces and escalates the existing gender inequality. Though women are highly vulnerable and impacted, they also are skilled to respond to these climate impacts in their own way. They have a unique knowledge and also they are able to utilize their potential to build resilience in their communities. In this men-dominated society, the resource management skills and natural remedies that women possess and apply while taking care of their families is mostly underrepresented and underutilized. Today's session, thus, will try to highlight the importance of recognizing this untapped potential of women, recognizing their leadership in addressing climate change and importance of harnessing this potential. So with this brief background about the session and our women agents of change, I would like to begin our session today and just a few housekeeping rules to see. We have 4 panelists for today's session, and each of them will be talking on their own specific areas of expertise. Each panelist will have 10 to 12 minutes at the max to talk about and present their studies. To keep the time and to stay within our time limits, we would request all participants to kindly make note of any questions that arise while they listen to the presentations. And we will have a question and answer round at the end of the session. So you will have enough time to get back to the panelists and have your questions answered. In case required, you can also type your questions in the chat box that we will take note of. So with this brief background, I would like to begin our session and first invite our first panelist, Ms. Sumaya Binte Selim from Bangladesh. Sumaya has completed her graduation and post-graduation in environmental sciences, and she brings in climate-related projects in the development sector for more than 5 years. Currently, she is working with ICAD and is also holding responsibilities on coordinating gender and climate change programs. She has experience of working in loss and damage, migration, livability, and she has expertise in managing projects related to the stated topics. Sumaya will help us set the context for today's discussion, climate crisis and gender inequality in South Asia. So over to you, Sumaya.
Thank you so much, Ruchi. Thank you so much for introducing me to the audience. So yeah, so setting the context that as we will be discussing about the climate crisis in South Asia, so I'll be just describing and discussing about some of the things that are needed to be known before we jump into the whole scenario and whole discussion. So I'm sharing my screen now. Is it showing?
Yes, yes, please go on.
Okay. So, so as we will be talking about the climate crisis, as well as we want to like see our women as heroes. So I'll bring up the discussion with the with some terminologies like equity. So this is the I kept my title as Equity in Action, Gender Mainstreaming in South Asian Region. So why I want to focus on the equity more in action for the gender mainstreaming in South Asia, because not every thing that we think as equal are appropriate and uh, comes with actual specific benefits for the woman and men. So that's the reason why we need the equity in action rather than the equality. Because if we go for the equity context, then we can understand that equity means if you need like two more interventions for upgrading the female condition to get into the scenery, same level with the male, then in that case, that will be the equity. Not like that, like for example, if a men need five implementation project for upgrading themselves and women need five more upgradation implementation project for upgrading themselves, it's not equal because women are already lag behind, and we need to like understand that from the context of project, from the context of programs. So I'll be going for going for some more definition. For example, one is the woman empowerment. What we actually understand with the woman empowerment. Woman empowerment involves enhancing the agency, capabilities, and the opportunities of women to make choices, as well as the participate fully in social, economic, and political spheres. So when it comes to the woman empowerment, then we need to like ensure about these three contexts of society, economy, as well as the politics. And then we will be going for the inclusive development understanding. So inclusive development seeks to ensure the development benefits all members of the society, considering their diverse identities, including their gender, ethnicity, and age. And what when we are like discussing about the gender transformation or the gender transformative approaches, then we need to know that it's not only about male and female. It's the main thing about including all of the people from the society, whether they are male or female or person with disability or from any ethnic group or from like young people or children or anyone. So when we'll be going for the gender transformative approaches idea, gender transformative approaches seek to challenge gender inequalities by transforming harmful gender norms, roles, and relations while working towards redistributing the power, resources, and services more equally. So that's the reason that we need gender transformative approaches rather than gender sensitive approaches. Because when we are talking about gender sensitive approach, gender sensitive means you know about the context, you understand the whole thing, you understand the idea, but when it comes to the implementation of work, then you are not like doing actual level. But in the gender transformative approaches, you need to do accordingly what you are understanding. So then I'll be going for the next slide. So why it's needed for the gender mainstreaming in the climate policy, I'll be now talking about that. So we are now talking about the South Asian context, but when it's come to the global context, it's also not very much like unsimilar to the South Asian context, because global inequality results from unequal power and resource distribution, and climate change disproportionately affects the woman. So that's the reason that 70% of the world's poor being female, less than 2% of land is owned by women, and only 10% of global income is received by women. So these statistics shows that why we need the specific inclusion of gender and women empowerment in the climate change context, especially when it comes to the South Asian region. We know about socio-economic and political context of the whole region, and that's where we need to work more. So, and gender mainstreaming in climate and climate change, how it relates actually. So we can it can be empowering women through gender mainstreaming, harnessing diverse perspectives for effective climate action, and we can also tell about the unveiling gendered climate impacts, bridging gaps for equitable resilience through gender mainstreaming. So we can achieve the resilience through gender mainstreaming. as well as climate justice through gender mainstreaming, transforming policy for inclusive solution, and also gender inclusive climate action, amplifying voices, maximizing impact through gender mainstreaming. So when when like man or a person is going for some management of the climate change project or climate change and development project, if he can see the perspective from each gender, then it will be like be more inclusive. As well as when it comes to the specifically South Asian context, the women are more involved into the family, and when it comes to the children bearing or taking care of the family, then it comes to the woman too. Even in some cases in Bangladesh, in southern side, women are involving with the economic activities as well as the family activities. So that's the reason that they know about the more contextual thing to be resilient from the climate change aspect. So that's why we need the bridging gaps for equitable resilience through the gender mainstreaming. And then I'll be going for describing some of the things that can be like affect the woman in different scenario. So climate change imposes all of these stresses for the human being. So it's not only for the female, it's also for the men. So crop failure, fuel shortage, shortage of safe clean water, resource scarcity, natural disaster, and diseases, also displacement. So now I'll be just describing that how the things actually affects women differently. So when there is a like crop failure, then the in many of the contexts, the men normally go for the seasonal migration in Bangladesh or in other countries of the South Asia, and then the woman need to take care of the family all alone, like whether it's like the children or the elder of the family. So this is the this kind of a social and familial pressure that they go through when it's like happening in the agricultural sector. And when there is like fuel shortage is the similar case. When it's shortage of safe clean water, the household chores, most of the household chores are related with the water. So when it comes to the water scarcity, then either women need to like go to long way for fetching water. On the other hand, in the southern part of Bangladesh, for example, as like there is saline intrusion, so they need to work more with the saline water, and that's the reason that they actually go through some specific skin diseases, as well as they or not they can't actually always get access to the safe drinking water as well as safe drinking water for their menstrual hygiene. So that creates another health impact on them. And this is like similar case for the resource scarcity too. And for the natural disaster, when there is no men in the family, it can be like a person can be widowed or divorced. On the other hand, in most of the cases, in most of the climate vulnerable areas, the men normally migrate to some other places. It can be like seasonal. But in those period of the time, they need to take care of the all of the resources of the household. So they need to take care of the elderly, and maybe they might need to shift the elder people as well as their children to the shelter center. So that's also another stress for them from the climate change. And also the water scarcity and related diseases, as well as heat related diseases, that's also create some specific portion of the stress for the female again. And when it comes to the cooking, in most of the cases, the women are involved in the cooking. So that's also creates some kind of heat stress for them in this hot weather or like increased temperature for the climate change. And and the last one is the displacement. When woman is going for migration for some reason, that's another type of stress for them to getting adjust to the environment as well as the social context. And when a man is going for the migration, then there are like many examples where the man is not actually coming back to the main main place from where they started, and maybe he started another marriage or involved with another woman. So that's also creates some social insecurity to them, which is also induced from the climate change. So these all of the negative reasons are enough for getting the woman in a specific focus area, why we need the climate change, why we need the women empowerment and women inclusion more into the climate change policy and projects. So Uh, like that's the reason that gender mainstreaming ensure inclusive policies by considering diverse needs, as well as it enhances efficiency and allocates resources effectively and benefiting both gendered and fostering a socially just and sustainable society. And how can we achieve that? So it must be prioritized in policy and project planning, emphasizing through analysis and impact assessment. Success requires political will, commitment, awareness, resources, information, and accessibility. And also, it is a shared responsibility across all policy domains, uncovering hidden gender disparities. So, all of the things that I just described in my last slide, that's also create like opportunities to get involved into the women empowerment and gender transformative approaches from government and non-government organization, because it also is like cover all of the sectors like water, agriculture, public health, education, and migration, and all of the context of the from the government and non-government side who are working on this. So, like approaches to addresses, I want to be the thing I started my presentation with equity and equality thing, and now I'll be talking about a bit with the gender sensitive thing and gender transformative.
So Maya,
Which, yeah,
last
minute.
1.5 minute.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
yeah, I'm done. I'm done. Yeah. So gender sensitiveness is an idea, and what we can like keep in our mind. We can be sensitive, but we are not always approaching or implementing with our work that we are gender sensitive. So when our gender sensitiveness is coming to our work for the implementation, then it creates the gender transformative idea. So it's always better to get into the system with the gender transformative approach, and it's always come with the individual and then the social context wise, household, families, and peer relationships, and the communities. And then it comes to the system and institutions, and then the laws and policies, the national coordinated action, and then again it goes to the societal structural places when it's need to be maintained properly. So we need to like start from ourselves. And some strategies, I will not describe the whole thing a bit, but I'll go for a specific example why we need like from starting from ourselves. So if I want to implement some of the toilets, for example, in our public school, then we need to think that whether there are like male students or female students, and also person with disability, and might be third gender. So this is like gender sensitive thinking of mine for the project development. And then when we are implementing and covering the analysis that, okay, there is the number of female is like that, and the number of male is like that, and we're like structuring 3 separate washroom for male, female, and the person with disability, then it can be like processed with the our gender sensitive thinking into the transformation. And that's where we need specific different involving different types of stakeholders. So it again comes from your like own perspective and individual, and then the secondary stakeholder, where why we are doing this, where we are doing this, and then the other person who can actually replicate or get inspired from this. It can be national government, donors, or parties, and then the internal people who need to be sensitized, who are working on implementing the project, and the external, where it again comes to the beneficiaries, authorities, or government. So we need like all of the people and socially, economically, and politically to involve into the gender sensitive approaches to be turned into the gender transformative approach. And that's where it's needed for the South Asian region more. So yeah, maybe I'm short of time. So just looking for these photos. These are from my field visit. These are the women leaders that you are seeing. It's very like rural area of Bangladesh, very remote places, but they are like working on their own genre. So I'll be talking later if there is any question. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Samaya. So the key highlight that I really see is that gender mainstreaming is very important. And when we are talking about gender mainstreaming, we are talking about the differential needs, their recognition. People with disabilities, men, women, even girls and boys. with age group also, there are differential needs that needs to be addressed. And that is where, when we talk about any kind of a policy documentation, policy recommendation, we also need to see that are we considering these different age groups and intersectionalities are taken into consideration. So, and the issue is same across all South Asia, and recognition of the linkage between gender and climate change will allow us to devise a gender responsive policies and actions that will help both equitable and effective outcomes to be there. Being the primary resource manager in the family, it is therefore critical to invest in women for seeking them as leaders and developing their agency rather than merely considering them as recipient of services. With this, I would like to invite our next two panelists who will be sharing with us case studies, real life examples of these climate change champions, the women heroes from our group. And first, let me welcome Pragya Srecharan, who is our next panelist. She is environmental management graduate and represents youth, women, and indigenous communities from the high mountains of Nepal. Currently, she is working at Prakriti Resource Center as program officer. And besides her experience on climate finance and climate-induced migration themes and research and capacity building adds on to her overall expertise. Pragya will be sharing us a case study of women leadership in locally led climate action within Nepal government. So over to you, Pragya.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. So, as Lucy mentioned, today I'm here to share the Nepal case studies, how our women groups at the local level are like doing the climate interventions at their own capability and their own leadership. So, is this up in the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so briefly, I will start with the context of Nepal. So, as Nepal, all of you know that Nepal is a mountainous country with a fragile geography, which has less economy, and it has lack of resources and skilled technology and manpowers that makes Nepal even more vulnerable to climate change. And even the many studies has shown that even we are able to limit the temperature to 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, it will be even higher for countries like Nepal, as it will be 2 degrees more to us. And if we are going to like this, as we are going now, as business as usual, it might be go up to over 5 degrees Celsius for Nepal. So you can not even imagine how devastating climate impacts will be for Nepal. So that impacts are always impacting our communities. Within the communities also, women are most vulnerable because they are disproportionately impacted and differently impacted, as our Sumaya also mentioned that women are most vulnerable among the other groups of vulnerable groups. And beside this, recently our Nepal has entered into the federal system that Nepal envisions now 3 layers of government, the federal, provincial, and local. But in Nepal right now, we are like targeting the local governments, as local governments stand like a backbone for the communities, where local governments are near and work for the communities and their people. So in Nepal, we are focusing on local government. And there are many evidence that women-led environmental actions are well known. For example, the community forestry is like well known, and Nepal is championing in terms of community forest management. And there are like provisions of having female chairpersons, 50% seats allocated for women groups and marginalized groups. So these kinds of interventions in Nepal has been given a very successful evidence that women can lead and do on their own, and they are capable enough to lead these kind of environmental interventions. So we have tried to use this women leadership in the climate aspect. So PRC is working using a model where there is a climate crisis that is like impacting all the communities. But within the communities, women, children, disabled peoples, indigenous peoples, and other marginal groups are mostly impacted. But due to the gender inequalities, the existing gender inequalities, and the climate crisis is like increasing these disparities among the women and these groups. So we have chosen the women groups as a key actor, as they are the one who are vulnerable, they are the one who are affected, but they are also an active actor that who can change the things and take a leadership for the climate interventions. So we have taken women groups as a key actor in this model, and within our women groups there are like indigenous people, disabled peoples, indigenous other disadvantaged groups within the women groups. So through these women groups, and we are trying to incorporate and as inclusive as it need to be. So women groups are the main key actors for this model. So what we do with our women groups is to build their capacity so that they will be more aware on the climate change aspect, the nexus between the climate change and its link with the women groups, how they are impacted and what can be their roles in these sectors. And as we are also working with the local government, so we are also trying to capacitate them on in terms of local level planning and processing, budgeting processes, and so on. And we envision that after this capacity building event, they will be more empowered and they will take a leadership. Through this leadership, the women groups will be advocating with municipal authorities or say municipalities, as they are the one who are responsible and they are the one who they have voted to and to lead and develop their areas. So through this, women groups will lobby and advocate with the municipality to localize the gender just climate actions, and also try to access the local resources that municipality has and they have allocated in terms of different subheadings of their developing budgets, fiscal year budgets and planning. So after accessing these budgets, the women groups will, in collaboration with municipality, will implement the local climate actions that are needed in their localities, and that's how we will address both the climate crisis as well as the gender inequalities issues. So through this ecosystem, we are envisioning that this will bring the gender just climate solution at local level, and we claim this as a gender just climate solution because these solutions will be led by women groups. The problems are identified the women groups. The whole process and the implementation will be owned by the women groups by themselves, and they are to implement these climate actions. They will use the local resources, and that will benefit all the communities, not only the women groups, but also the communities. So this is how we have envisioned our theory of change, from women as a victim to the as an active agent of change, and we'll do through the gender just climate solution theory. So for this, we have done lots of capacity building work in many series in many years, where they are capable of enhancing their knowledge in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, about the climate change, about the local budgeting things, about the right holders and the right bearers, how to advocate at the local level, how to access the local budgets. So these women groups are trained in those aspects of areas, and they are able to now they are able to lobby at their own capacity. They are lobbying with mayor and deputy mayors, with the other local bureaucrats. So this is how our model is working till now. We have started this before 4 or 5 years, and within these 4 or 5 years, we are like able to achieve small achievements with these women groups, which has motivated us to do more and scale up our works. So what kind of local climate adaptation or mitigation actions that our women's group are doing at the local levels are like they are working on the conservation of water sources, similarly to access of drinking water, which they are also using for the irrigation purposes, and they are able to produce more vegetables and fruits. Even you can see the happy faces in our women groups here. Similarly, our women groups are also working in the wetland conservations in Ilam, and our women groups are also working for the public park conservation and decoration things. They are also doing the plantation activities. This is the most common thing that every women groups are doing in their local areas. But the best part is like that our women groups are not doing by themselves, but they are also engaging more and diverse groups. As you can see, this is a Montessori school kid who is planting. So they are also including the schools, youth groups, and other relevant stakeholders within their communities areas. So they are working in a collaboration with other CSOs too. So they are also working and training other women groups, not only them, but they are also working with other women groups.
One more minute, Pragya.
Yeah, okay. So they are also working with other women groups and train them to make paper plates, recycling of old clothes to make a mat and cushions from them. And they are also manufacturing effective microorganism liquid, that is effective for making the manure, household manure, and also producing organic manure that is used for the rooftop gardening. They are also promoting nature-based farmings, and they are also producing the local products with their own packagings and promoting youth empowerment within Nepal. So this is how they are doing the climate action at the community level, as well as they are also earning from this and empowered at their own. And we have some challenges while doing these things. So I don't have much time to, I will go by listing it. So the first challenge was the gender stereotype that we all the Asian countries or the South Asian countries have that mentality within them. So that was the main challenge. And lack of knowledge, the lack of knowledge was the challenge for us, because even the women groups as well as the local government uh, elected or authorities don't have the much knowledge on the climate change and climate policies that we have at the national level, and less support from the family, as our women's groups are working as a volunteer and doing their work when they have the leisure time. So that is also obvious in our context. And some political issues that because as Nepal there are different kinds of parties. So when there are some political parties, some transition in political leadership and bureaucrats shifting, that kinds of issues were there in terms of politics. And we have many achievements. For example, through their works and leadership in their community, now they are able to change that gender stereotype that they have they have in the previous. So they are able to got this and change their mind as a women leadership. And then now they are also recognized and respect in the communities by the municipality and by the other social means and CBOs. And they are now able to implement any kind of climate actions in their own and in their locality. Similarly, they are also accessing additional fund. So with this fund, I would also like to highlight that all the climate action that I had mentioned in the previous slide, they have done by accessing the local resources from municipality or other kind of fund sources. PRC is not providing any penny to implement such implementation actions, but PRC is doing the capacity building and training works for women groups. But other than that, all are done by our women groups on their own capability. Now it has made a good relationship with municipality. Now the municipality are like welcoming our women groups. Even they are requesting our women groups to bring some proposal to do work on the environment sector or on waste management sector. Whenever it is a time of local level planning process, they invite our women groups to come up with list of your priorities, actions. So that kind of power relationship is showing in our work. So I might be taking much time. And so through this action, they are like well known and collaborating with other CBOs in their localities. And they now can themselves says that we are now well empowered, we are so confident to speak up and ask questions, raise questions, access the things. This has built our personal and organizational capacity. So they are also happy with all our collaborations and all what they have been doing till now. So I will end here. If there is any question, then I will be back. Okay, thank you, Ruchi.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Pragya. Really an interesting case study. And of course, the whole idea that we need to invest in our women. Just saying that they are in the room, just saying that they are around and they were there when we were talking doesn't help. But providing that handhold support and a equal playing field for the women so that they can perform is what's important. And that's where they can really show something that they're really doing with the government, taking decisions and taking things forward. So without taking much time, let's listen to another case study from our next panelist, Triana, waiting desperately, I can see. So welcome, Triana. She is the Secretary General at Seruni in Indonesia, a national democratic women's organization in Indonesia that focuses on gender equality and women's control over land and natural resources. She holds a degree in agriculture from Bravier University. In her role, she coordinates actions and campaigns across 17 provinces in Indonesia, addressing issues of gender equality and women's control over land and natural resources. Over to you, Trainia, and we look forward to your representation.
Thank you, Ruchi, for the time. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here with all of you. So again, my name is Triana. I'm Secretary General of Seruni. Seruni is a national grassroots women organization in Indonesia. We organize women from all sectors. Our members come from women workers, rural women, urban poor women, indigenous women, student women, and also fisher women. Now I stand before you today not only as a representative, but as a conduit for the voices that are often unheard but resonate deeply within our rural communities. These voices belong to the resilient, resourceful, and remarkable rural women whose lives have been intricately intertwined with the vast expanses of palm oil plantation and the evolving specter of climate change. As our president now is planning to expand the palm oil plantation to cover 25,000 million hectares of land to meet the growing demand for biofuel as a shift away from fossil fuel. As we gather here to explore agroecology as women-led climate action in Indonesia, it's also essential to ground ourselves in the lived experience and wisdom of the women who are at the forefront of this struggle. These women are guardians of our biodiversity, the nurturers of our communities, and the unsung heroes of sustainability. Let me share with you some of their stories, experiences, and aspirations. So now the seasons and the earth temperature change more rapidly and are very erratic, undermining the ability of traditional agriculture to maintain food crops due to loss of water sources for plants, loss of traditional or heirloom annual fruit crops such as duku and durian, provides a threat to endemic livestock, which are highly dependent on water and sufficient grass. Malayan land buffalo is one of the livestock that has the potential to be hereditary for food security, which is threatened. This cannot be separated from the expansion of monoculture crops and depleting agriculture water, namely palm oil. The government left the peasants alone to maintain their traditional crops and livestock without intervention. Meanwhile, palm oil planting subsidies continue to be dispersed. Women farmers have lost access to their individual small farms since they were changed from rubber or food crops to palm oil. They no longer take part in co-productions and are on unequal footing with men. What's unique is that women remain active and have no problems on large palm oil plantation owned by big landowners, but decline on their own small farm. Women laborers' participation in their own small agricultural land, which has been replaced by palm oil, has decreased drastically. Economic dependence on men is very high economically, and these practices contribute to the high unemployment in rural area. The use of chemical agricultural inputs for oil palm is very intensive, which is completely different from traditional farming before palm oil. So the agriculture to meet food sufficiency need to mobilize productive forces to meet food self-sufficiency. In the midst of a chronic crisis, the semi-feudal system does not allow the peasant to produce sufficient and inputs are difficult and sorry for the lost connection. Sorry.
That's okay. Carry on, Trina.
Okay. Producing food crops in a situation like this is very difficult without an agrarian revolution, without eliminating the bad example of monopoly land tenure and its allotment. People will not choose food crop as long as there are big landlords who preserve export-oriented non-food commodity crops of the difficulties they face. Therefore, raising the peasants to produce food crops cannot be separated from a genuine land reform program against land monopoly and against land being used to produce raw materials for improvised industrial purposes. At a time when the cost of agricultural input is very expensive and difficult to obtain, then the farmers must learn from the past food production experiences, which did not depend on fertilizers and chemical drugs painstakingly. Maintain soil fertility by using natural materials that are easy and cheap and available around the farm. Organic farming is an option for farmers to lower production costs in order to be free from slavery and at the same time obtain healthy food sources. People's organic farming is different from imperialist-style organic farming, which intentionally produce organic crops to serve the needs of the middle class or the reactionary class to maintain the health of the oppressor and exploiters to serve the lifestyles. People's organic farming opposes reactionary class organic farming, which deliberately sells expensive industrial organic fertilizers and other agricultural input. Deliberately exclusive of organic fertilizers for the ruling class only by increasing the price of organic food. Smallholder organic farming is based on cheap agricultural inputs and output. For the needs of the people themselves, to oppose the domination of the landlord and imperialism, to oppose the backward food production scheme of the landlords, as well as modern agriculture, which is fully dependent on industrial seeds, fertilizer, and drugs of monopoly big capitalist agriculture. So the agroecology is preserving traditional knowledge. Rural women, often the bearers of traditional knowledge, have witnessed the gradual transformation of their ancestral lands into industrial landscapes dominated by palm oil monocultures. Yet, they persistently hold on to the wisdom passed down through generations, knowing the value of their natural heritage. They gather herbs, tend to medical plants, and continue the practices that ensure the land remains fruitful. Fostering agroecological practices in the face of environmental degradation and dwindling natural resources, rural women are the architect of agroecological practices. They implement polyculture system, integrate livestock, and utilize organic methods to rejuvenate soil health. Their fields become not just sources of sustenance, but showcase of resilience. Promoting women's leadership, rural women are not passive victims. They are powerful agent of change. They let self-help groups organize community-based seed banks and advocate for the rights and the rights of future generation. Their leadership is instrumental in the battle against both palm oil monocultures and climate change. Facing climate change, climate change amplifies existing vulnerabilities, and rural women bear the brunt of these impacts. Erratic weather patterns disrupt planting and harvesting cycles, compounding food insecurity, but they adapt, experimenting with drought-resistant crop and water conservation techniques, and most importantly, they organize themselves to demand climate justice. Their stories of courage and determination are not isolated incidents, but reflection of a collective spirit that thrives in the face of adversity. These women remind us that while the challenges are daunting, the solution often lie in the wisdom of our communities and the leadership of those who understand the intricate dance between humans and the environment. As we delve into discussion about agroecology, let us remember that it's not just a set of techniques or practices. We also see agroecology as a movement building across country and region. It represents a profound shift in our relationship with the land. It signifies a commitment to honoring the knowledge held by rural women, promoting their leadership, and acknowledging that our survival depends on safeguarding the ecosystem that sustains us. The solution is that the government must provide subsidies for farmers, including women farmers, to sustain their small production, both for endemic crops and endemic livestock and fish. Let us not merely discuss agroecology today, but let us commit to amplifying the voices and experiences of these rural women in our collective journey towards a more sustainable and just future. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Triana. That was an excellent case study, which really talks about managing this whole commercial business, which is men-driven, which talks just money, but which is not very eco-friendly, which is not very just to the women who hardly have any lands in their own names, who lack resources, and how the government and these initiatives and the learning of the women can really feed into and preserve environment and at the same time make them more economically sustainable. So both it's a win-win situation when we start investing and looking at the assets that we have locally available in the communities as women and their knowledge. So with these two case studies, I mean, from the three presentations till now, one thing is coming out very clearly that we need to talk about justice. We need to talk about a just and differentiated need assessment, and all of that will come when we start thinking about the solutions which are more climate just and gender just. And with that, gender just climate solution, which are promoted by the women, which are owned by the women, and which are identified based on their own needs and the requirements by the women and women-led groups. So next panelist, who is also our last panelist, is going to help us to understand this largely used terms, which is gender just climate solutions. So let's welcome Prema Ratnikar. She is from Nepal, and Prema is a PhD candidate at Department of Geography at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, where she is studying the sustainability of Lake Mosa in Norway as a socio-ecological system as part of the Mission Mosa project. Originally from Kathmandu, Prema holds a bachelor's degree in Environment and Development Studies from Rismikan Asia Pacific University in Japan. Prema focused her research on gender marginalized groups, climate change adaptation. Following the completion of a master's degree, Prema has contributed to research projects that explore intricate relationship between gender and climate change in Nepal. So over to you, Prema, and we look forward to understanding more on the gender just climate solutions.
Thank you so much for a wonderful introduction to me and my background, Ruchi. Appreciate it. I'm just trying to share my screen right now. It seems like I am not able to share my screen. It says host disabled participant.
Okay, I will share
Screen
for you.
sharing. Okay.
I think now you can share your screen.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see that.
Here we go. Yeah, and I would also like to thank Prakriti Resources Center for inviting me to speak. I'll just jump right into my presentation. This discussion paper was a result of a short research that I did through Prakriti Resource Center in Nepal. And today I will talk about, start with a little bit of background on why we thought gender-just climate solutions is something that needs to be explored, and move on to the findings of this short research. Yeah, starting up with the background to this research, gender-just climate solution has become a buzzword in the field of development. I was hired by Prakriti Resources Center because they thought that the term has been used by many different organizations in multiple different ways. However, what does it really mean? There was not a common consensus to that. So the aim of this short research was to develop a common understanding of the term between different practitioners. Not only will a common understanding lead to less confusion, but our hope is that this will also lead to an establishment of a measure and accountability towards partners who promise such a gender-just climate solution. The result of this research was 9 key principles of gender-just climate solutions, which I am going to be sharing today. But before I do that, I briefly want to touch upon the methodology that I used for this research. I undertook a literature review, and building up on that, I conducted interviews and focus group discussions with women's groups, women's organizations, gender focal persons of development projects, and gender experts. So I interacted with around 53 individuals And this paper also went through 2 rounds of peer review. Before I start with the actual findings of this research, I would like to stress on one thing, that is that the discussion paper focused on gender just aspect of gender just climate solutions and not the climate solutions aspect. So yes, what are the principles of gender just climate solutions? What features should a climate solution ideally have to be called gender just? Number 1, we have executes gender assessments. One of the themes that appeared often was the need to conduct gender assessments before designing a program. Climate needs are not homogeneous. What one group in society finds challenging, the others might not. I believe that conducting gender assessment is to recognize that difference. Having recognized that they have different needs, the people I talked to stress that the results and recommendations of these assessments must be taken up in the designing of the project as well, which they found that it often is not. And number 2, addresses women's climate vulnerabilities. Having recognized that women's climate needs are not always the same, a climate solution should address it to be truly gender just. Yes, a climate solution might be solving a problem, but we also have to ask, whose problem is it solving? Is it solving women's problems or not? Number 3, ensures women's participation and leadership in decision making. There is a problem in Nepal, as I'm sure there is in other areas of the world as well, of tokenistic participation, which is participation without power or value. In fact, a heavily recurring theme with women's groups was that they believed that women's participation and leadership actually led to a better management, which I found is also supported by existing literature in the region as well. And I am very sure that Pragya can collaborate as well. And number 4 is promotes information dissemination to women. This was again a recurring theme with the women's group. If there is a climate solution and women's participation is a requirement, which it often is in Nepal, they should be given information about it. And not only should they be made aware about the projects and programs, but they should be also given information about how and why it is beneficial for them, rather than assuming lack of interest and motivation from women. They should also be additionally be informed on their rights so that they are able to demand accountability from the authorities. And number 5 is enforces gender responsive budgeting. This means that an ideal gender just climate solution would strive for budget allocations that provide for mainstreaming gender concerns by investing in girls and women through appropriate allocation of resources for implementation of gender just climate solutions. So budget allocations must be earmarked. Budgets must be earmarked for girls and women of vulnerable groups for gender-related actions. And number 6, we have assures equitable benefit sharing. And Sumaya has started her presentation with this topic of equitability. And I would like to further it by saying that it is very complex, and especially in the context of Nepal, which is stratified in multiple different ways. However, we have found that this is one of the requirements for a climate solution to be gender just. And equitability, additionally, it really depends on what kind of climate solutions we are talking about. And similarly, benefits also depend on the kind of climate solutions, as it may be tangible or intangible benefits. And number 7 applies gender-sensitive climate actions. This is also a concept that Sumaya talked about in her presentation. However, I find that maybe we define the terms a little bit differently, which again highlights the importance of this research in having common understanding how important it is. For us, we found that gender norms and roles make certain climate actions inaccessible for women. Gender just climate solution would address this concern. And this is how we define gender sensitivity in asking where is the location, for example, where is the location of a training program? Is it very far from a village where it might not be acceptable for a woman to go? What time is the training program? Is it at a time when children need to be dropped off at school or when evening meals need to be prepared? What is a climate solution doing to ensure that women with young children are able to participate? What is the training program? What language is the training program is in? Is it in a language that is too difficult to understand, even if it is the language that women speak? Is it too technocratic, or is it something that would be considered a male domain? Does it perpetuate gender-based discrimination and inequality that already exists in society? Gender just climate solution would ideally apply sensitivity related to these issues. And number 8, we have promotes accountability towards women and the most marginalized. This point relates to where the accountability of a climate solution is. We must ask if it is often towards the funding agency. A gender just climate solution would have accountability towards the most marginalized and women, as well as women of the most marginalized groups. And lastly, we have promotes transformation through positive change in gender power relationships and local gender roles. With this point, I wanted to highlight that gender just climate solution would foster women's democratic rights and women's empowerment in their communities. As Pragyaji also explained in her presentation, a gender just climate solution should be women identified, women led, women devised, and women owned. The solutions to climate solution should come from the women themselves based on their knowledge of their local and indigenous knowledge. So in this way, a gender just climate solution should foster women's self-determinism. And ideally, it should address unequal power relations in communities and aim to transform it. Yes, that was the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening to me and the research that I did. Yeah, it is an honor to present here. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Prema. So with this, we come to the end of the 4 presentations, and the floor is open for any questions and answers from the participants. So in case you have any questions to any particular panelist, kindly you can raise your hand and talk directly, or you may type it in the question and answer round. We have another 15 minutes for the discussion. Yes, Vinayji, I can see your hand.
Hi, everybody. This is actually not to a particular panelist, but after having listened to all the presentations, which were really excellent, and I really like that, and I would like to highlight just 2 points. Like when in the last presentation, Prema, she highlighted as principles for gender just climate solutions. She really highlighted some 8, 9 principles. there the focus was, for example, all the programs, projects should do gender analysis, and then there should be, we should focus on women's participation, leadership, equitable benefit, etc. And for that, I think the one thing that we should discuss is the intersectionality also. Because when it comes to equitable benefit sharing or leadership or participation, I mean, in the present context also in our South Asian countries, even in the political parties or in the political platforms in the parliament and in the decision-making bodies, we see quite a lot of women, but I mean, if we see most of them, who are they? They are well connected, they are well educated, they are from very good background and then everything. And yeah, I mean, no problem with that. But do we focus on them or do we focus on those who need our focus more? So that is, I think one thing we have to discuss is intersectionality. And the another thing, which is not a very big issue, but still we should be clear which terminology to use, like gender sensitivity, gender responsiveness, or gender transformative. Like maybe it seems that sometimes we use sensitivity and responsiveness interchangeably, and maybe there is a little bit of difference between them. So these are two things. Intersectionality, I think we should give a little bit more focus on that, and then clarity on the sensitivity, responsiveness, and transformative part. Yeah, thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Vinayji. Point well taken. And any further questions, remarks, reflections from the participants? Hem Kumar Shiva, I can see your hand.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. My name is Adriana. I am going to talk in the voice of Hem Kumari, that it is the representative of Sahayatra, one of the women groups that Pratima was talking about. So, well, first of all, thank you, because it was like really, really useful information. And also because we are talking about that forgettable people, no? That in this case, they are the women. But super related with the previous questions, I have some doubts, because that local woman, it is true that they are little by little having access to funds, because with that fund, like with that money, they are capable of going on with different kind of projects in the social and environmental area. The thing is that they, as the question before they say, they are not that use like, for example, have knowledge in English or knowledge about writing formal reports. They don't have all that kind of resources. So when they want to make a project, they have like really barriers in order to access to that kind of resource, no? So I have like a question for you, that maybe you have like different ideas or different recommendations about how that women that they are like leading the local problems, no, in the area, concretely in Ilam, could have like a better access to that kind of resources in order to access to that funds.
So anyone who would like to come in and respond?
So I will jump in.
Please.
So in response to these two queries, that yes, definitely intersectionality is very important while we talk about the gender equity or gender just thing. So we have also envisioned that intersectionality within the women vulnerabilities and their different kind of needs, where we will definitely touch this intersectionality, because within the women there are different types of women groups that have different needs based on their context, based on their geography, based on their economic status. So definitely intersectionality is within our gender just climate solutions principles, as it is not mentioned or highlighted as a term in the title, but yes, we are working through this intersectionality lens also. In terms of other terminologies that Binay sir has raised about the gender sensitivity, responsive, and transformative things, I think on this regard, maybe Lucy, you will be best to say your opinion on the differentiation on these terminologies, as you have also given us before. And on the language barrier and to difficulties to access the international fund is, yes, there is language barrier. Even in Nepal, while talking about our women group, initially our women groups are also not able to develop the proposal in Nepali language because they have never done that before. So we also try to train them on their own organizational needs. So we also give them training on proposal development, how to do budget estimations, and how to put the financial and admin records. So we are also helping them on these aspects of their organizational building things. So yes, one of our women groups from Ilam Sahayatra is also accessing funds from international donors. But we also try to help them whenever they are in need. When they ask us to that they are trying to get some fund from international donors, we try to help them, and also PRC also tried many times to write the proposal on their behalf by using their local peoples and local knowledge and local informations to access those funds. But yeah, we need to focus on these international language to scale up their work, what they are doing at the national level and community level. Yeah, thank you.
If I can just add a little bit to what Pragyaji just talked about regarding intersectionality, I 100% agree that it is important, and I am a very big advocate of intersectionality. That's one of my lenses that I look at the world through. And it has been a lens in this research that I just presented as well, even though it might not be in the title and in my presentation itself, but it is in the research. And what I would say about intersectionality is that it's a very idealistic lens, but the methodology of how we actually use it even in our daily life is, I think, very hard to practice. That is that. And also about the differentiation between the words, the terms, gender sensitivity and gender responsiveness, I think it just further highlights why it is important to not just do research about it, but it just highlights the importance of the research, I think, of defining terminologies like gender just climate solutions so we have a common understanding. So I think that is something that needs to be done. I think that could be a solution.
Yeah. So Sumaya?
Yeah, from the intersectionality perspective, I'm just echoing with all of my colleagues. I'm agreed to all of the points that they have shared. On the second note of like mentoring the woman group so that they can access the fund. So from Bangladesh and from some other countries too, what Pragya has said, I have like opportunity to meet the municipal woman group that she has mentioned about. So it was very fascinating and they're really doing great. So from ECAD, like from our center and from some other centers of Bangladesh too, there are some capacity building program where we are actually getting the women who are working in the climate change and development sector, and we are mentoring them to the different in like sectors of the climate change for the funding, for writing the proposal and guiding through the access to the funding. So we are mentoring them when they are stuck in at some point for something, for the language barrier also, we try to do that. As well as what can South Asia as well as can do in the COP2, that the translation of the whole proceedings as well as simplifying the things, that also we try to like follow in our Bangladesh context or any other perspective, so that they can get the simplified idea, so that they can get their ideas into it, and we can just like guide them through the system.
Wait. Just to add, since Pragya has already put me on the pinpoint to talk about this terminology, yes, when we are talking about gender and gender concepts, this whole, idea, it's as simple as, equity and equality. So one can be a way and other is an end. So unless you have the, idea or the issue around equity, that you have to do some differential treatment for the people who are left behind. You have to give them some additional support to come to be at par before you start talking about equality. Nothing will happen. The world will not be equal. If you keep giving everything equally to everybody, people who are behind will always stay behind. Similarly, when we are talking about these three terminologies of being sensitive, just gender sensitive, being responsive or transformative, I think it is again a continuum where you start being sensitive, start addressing the needs and acknowledging it by being responsive and really addressing the issues which are there in the community. And once we have really seen what the issues are, do we had matching budgets? Do we had matching abilities, resources, whether it is human resource or a financial resource, to help support the system to be able to make inclusive the entire intervention, where people, in terms of whether we are talking about intersectionality, is it only the women from the sections who can access those are all coming in the forefront, even if we are talking about just women, or it is also the women from the real downtrodden areas, hard to reach areas, who find it difficult to come to the common platform or the mainstream dialogue areas. So this is all that we are talking about. And I think, yes, we do at times use the terms sensitivity or gender responsive or transformative sometimes interchangeably, but it is a continuum, and these very fine lines need to be really monitored if you want to see a very inclusive and a transformative program. So thanks for pointing it out. And I think this session is about looking at our women folks, looking at our women champions who are out there in the communities, all there, but who wants the access to these skill sets, who had been always behind, and now the team, the members, the people who are engaging with these women are helping them to uplift the skills, the capacities, building their agency so that they are actually able to voice and walk their talks. It's not just that they are not getting the platforms, they are just in the room, but they do not have the space. So I think this whole session really brings us towards the end. We have the last 5 minutes. Any further question, or otherwise I'll go on the final takeaways. Last question, if we can take from the group, in case there is any. Okay, so I don't see any show of hands. So, just to conclude, there are very specific one takeaway if I want to take from each of the presentations. So to begin with, yes, we need to start thinking from the equity perspective. We need to start thinking from the perspective that there are people who are left behind, and how we can support them by giving them those additional resources that they need to come at par and start voicing their difficulties and their challenges, and they are able to come at a level where they can actually expedite their rights. Second thing is that women being the primary focus and the primary resource manager in the family, it is critical that we start investing in them to develop them as leaders and to develop their agency, and not merely see them as recipients of our services. just the inclusion of women in our policies and programs is not sufficient. I think to ensure a meaningful participation, it is imperative that we ensure they are guaranteed a seat at the decision-making table. Gender policies and gender actions, most of the time we keep talking about, we see that anything that comes up, every policy has started talking about having a gender lens, having a gender action plan in place. But what we see is that most of the time there are no indicators associated with it. How will you address the progress? And they end up just becoming some activities done with a group of women, which does not provide us from strategic interventions which are really required for long-term sustainability in building women's agency. So we really need to be mindful of the fact that what we are intervening, where we are bringing women in, are we bringing them in with the skill set that they need to really participate in those discussions. And coming from the case studies that we have, when we develop these skill sets, we develop and support the women from the groups. In Nepal, women are coming up with their capacities, with their discussion rights, where they're talking to the local government. They're telling them their needs. They are sitting on the table to tell what budgets will be required to have those, whether it is farm-led interventions, where it is to do with their agriculture or water resource management. They are coming forward. How are we building those skill sets? Similarly, in the another case study in Indonesia, how are we helping them to have those lands that they have the access to? How we can, hit at the federal system, hit at those commercial systems, and really build these organic systems, the traditional, understanding and knowledge of the women and the local people, and help save the environment while giving them the financial independence. So these are the things that we need to work with when we are in the community to really uplift the groups that we are working with. And finally, we need to move towards a gender just climate solution, which are vital in today's scenario, evolving and moving away from the narrative that women are vulnerable, they are victims. We need to move toward a gender just climate, environment and solution, which ensures that women are leading the discussions, women are owning the discussions, and they're also devising their solutions, which are naturally feasible, which are rational, and which can be really adapted in their environment. So with that, I think we come to the end of this session. And I really thank everyone, all the participants, for their active participation and listening and being with us for this whole time. Thanks, Sumaya, Traina, Pragya, Prema, for all of this support and your excellent presentations. And finally, to our team who has supported us for this whole IT support. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for this excellent session. Bye-bye.
Just one thing, ECAT team, if you can take a picture of us, a screenshot.
Yeah, we already did. Thank you so much.
Okay, so can you please open our cameras at the
Okay,
panel?
all right. Thank you so much. We're done.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Okay,
Thank
before
you.
leaving,
Bye-bye.
you.
thank you all
Thank you
of
so
you
much.
for
Bye.
joining us, and also